Just that one. Audio through that's fine now. Yeah.
Okay, so this is picking up the signal here.
Yeah, picking up the sound from there through this does not work.
But what does it stop us from running the signal to that?
Yeah, so I've got the signal coming in through the. Yeah, we got rid of the hum. So you're gonna steal our pizza then, Ron? Well, you sure? Yeah. Hopefully. Oh. It is a little bit dark. That's why.
I know, right? I can see.
Check 1, 2.
It's on.
It's on. Okay.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to kick it off and I manage this? Or
Yeah, if you want.
do you want me to...
It's up to you. Whatever you feel more comfortable with. If you want to come up and... I mean, it's going to pretty much run.
Check 1, 2. Okay.
I might pick those up.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit easier. We decide who's going first?
It was always going to be me.
Stick it right here if that's okay.
Yeah, stick it wherever you want.
Check 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You can count to 4.
That's a bit beyond me. Stick it in my pocket.
Just leave it turned on for a moment. We'll do an audio test.
Test.
Yeah, not you.
You want me to try it?
I'd like to put my phone.
Check.
Would you like to put one on me?
Would you like it?
There you go. I'm going to stick it in my pocket.
Yep. I'll put it in the pocket somewhere.
Stick it in my pocket.
Speak.
Are you going first?
Of course I am. You told me I had to.
There you go.
No, something's up.
Yeah, it's not very high.
Shh. How are we all?
Just try talking.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We're going to start very shortly, don't worry.
Good.
Technical difficulties.
They don't like me.
How about now?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
It's low, but it will do. Just hold this power off. You can turn yours off. Oh, leave it on.
Okay. I think we're ready. Okay. Are we ready to kick off? Okay, everybody, welcome to the, what month are we in? Movember meetup. Who's doing Movember this month? Just me. It's a bit embarrassing. It looks like a caterpillar's crawled across my face and died, but anyway, it is what it is, and I'm doing it for charity, so it's all good. Welcome to the WordPress meetup for Movember. I really should get the clicker, shouldn't I? That would be handy. Okay. So, WordPress Brisbane, who's here for the first time? Awesome. Hopefully it won't be the last time. This is a fun meetup. We're a good, friendly bunch. You'll get to know people, especially after the talks. We'll have a bit more networking and a few bits of pizza, so it's all fun. We're all volunteers. This is not a paid gig for anybody, unfortunately. We all volunteer our time and our effort to put this on every month. The speakers are volunteers. And we're always looking for speakers and other people to help us organise. So if you want to help out, put your hand up and or come and talk to one of us, and we're happy to show you what to do. But me and Dion have been doing it for a long time. We're hoping that we get some more people step up and help out. We're live streaming. Yay. It's all going out to the world. And Dion's been doing an amazing job of hooking everything up and making it work, and under the expert guidance of Doug there. Thank you, Doug. But we're toying with this, and it's working quite well, and it's allowing people who can't normally get to the meetup possibly see what's going on, and hopefully hear and see it all. So it's great. Thank you to Dion, and thanks, Doug, for all your help. Doug's, for those who came to WordCamp and seen the amazing videos that came out of WordCamp, that's all thanks to Doug. Evacuate. So if we have any hassles and fires and earthquakes, don't use the elevators, apparently, even though it's the quickest way down. Look for the exits. There's one over there's one over there, and there's one over there. But just look for whoever's running the fastest and try and keep up. Toilets are just down past the elevators where you came in. And that's pretty much it. We're just sort of there somewhere. Toilets are not that way. They're that way. Let's thank our sponsors. Now, this wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, as well as the people volunteering to do all this. But our sponsors allow us to have drinks and pizza and supply the venue and all sorts of things. So big thank you to Kinetics. Who here knows about Kinetics? Yeah, there's a lot of people. They're a great local company, great bunch of guys. If you've been to a WordCamp, and a lot of them, they often come to the meetups, you would have met them. They're great guys, do a great job. Talk to them about hosting, and yeah, they really help support the local community all around Australia, not just Brisbane. Plesk. So who knows what Plesk is? Okay, does anybody know what cPanel is? So Plesk is like cPanel on steroids. It's amazing. So I really liked when I was using Plesk. It was a great little system. So check it out. And the guys at Kinetics use Plesk. WP Engine. Does anybody know what WP Engine is? Can you tell me what it is? So WP Engine is a WordPress specific host, fully managed hosting digital experience platform. If you want to know more about it, please come and see me. I do have to know a few things about it, not much. Just a few little tidbits, but yeah, definitely come and talk to me, or if you want to know more about that. Slack. Who here's Slack? Anybody Slack here? Yeah, there's a lot of Slackers. Okay. For those who don't know what Slack is, it's a messaging system that we use to talk to each other a bit, like the old IRC kind of things. And we've got a really good community in Australia on the Slack channel. So if anybody's got any questions outside of the meetup, who you want to find the answers to those burning questions, get on the Slack channel. If you go to wpaustralia.org, you'll see the directions on how to join up. And it's really good. There's lots of information and the occasional cat meme as well, so lots of information and stuff. Our next meetup, December the 12th. What's that? Speaker. WordPress Enlightenment. What the hell is that? Okay. So what we found out is that this year our meetup is actually going to clash with the tech drinks at Brisbane. So we need to find out whether anybody wants to actually have a meetup, or we ought to go to I think it's at the Platform Bar again, and have a few drinks. So we'll see. We'll maybe get a show of hands.
Who knows what the tech drinks are?
Okay, so tech drinks is all the tech meetups, like your Joomla meetups, Drupal meetups, PHP meetups, JavaScript. Pretty much everybody, all the techie meetups, they get together at the end of the year and go to a bar and talk tech and partake of the occasional lemonade. So that's on the same night as the WordPress meetup. So we'll probably maybe we'll put something out to the group shortly. Show of hands, who would like to have a meetup in December? 2 people. No.
Who would like to go to the tech drinks, or who would like to come to the WordPress Brisbane meetup? Tech drinks?
Tech drinks? The WordPress meetup, show of hands. Ooh.
It looks to me like we're going to the tech drinks and they're self-organised.
Yeah, that sounds like... We'll do a live stream from the tech drinks to the WordPress meetup. So we'll work that out. It looks like we'll probably have a meetup. We'll work something out. Okay. We've got lots of other meetups. If you're not from Brisbane or you're looking to move, there's lots of other meetups around. There's a lot in Brisbane. In fact, Brisbane, Queensland is leading the charge for WordPress meetups in Australia. Good on you, Queensland. But there's meetups all around Australia and New Zealand, Bali, everywhere. So find a meetup. If you're travelling and you feel like you need a WordPress hit, you can always find a meetup somewhere. If you like a casual chat, we have the Kooparoo. We still doing that, Dion?
It's still running.
It's still running. There you go. Next Wednesday, the 3rd Wednesday of the month. So if you want to try something a little bit more relaxing, you can go for a casual chat at Kooparoo and coffee and WordPress. Ooh, there's another one. This is more north side, Chermside, Westfield, if you want to try that one out. Apparently skipping December and January, so don't bother going next month or the month after. But we'll have that back on again next year. Northside, so these are all our meetups. There's a Northside, North Lakes meetup, which is quite good. Coffee, Chermside, Ipswich, Gold Coast, you can see it all. Get along to one of these if you can. Oh, here we go. We're getting to the meat of the night. We've got the first speaker. That's Stuart. So we've got 2 speakers tonight, which is a bit of a novelty. We haven't done that for a long time. There was a time we used to do 2 speakers quite often, but it's really hard to find speakers. We're looking for speakers, by the way. If anybody wants to be a speaker, please come and see us. So Stuart's going to talk about the need for speed. So he's going to be first up. I'll get him on because we're running out of time and I want pizza. So we will get you on. So big hand for Stuart and he'll do his talk now. Thank you.
Let's try that.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, building websites since 1996. E-commerce, affiliate marketing, building websites to make money since 1998. These days, Toni runs a web design business in Hervey Bay. Fairly successful one, keeps us fed and watered, and beard sometimes. And while Toni does all the design work, I tend to do what other people might think of boring as the security, the copywriting, and now these days, keeping websites functioning at a speed that Google likes. And speed is very important. Next one. No. How do I get out of that? So, why?
Why PowerPoint? Why?
No, it's why Apple.
Yeah. There we go.
Which one? The right hand. We do all sorts of things to make our websites look really fancy and wonderful, but they're as slow as a dead dog. So Google tells us that we are told that people expect our websites to load quickly, and they leave if the site is too slow to load. The other reason is that we need to think about speed is because Google hates you. Not only does Google say you
Oh, it's got flat batteries.
Nothing? Yes? So something? Okay. So we need to think about our speed of our websites because people don't want to hang around waiting for a slow website to load. And we also need to think about it because Google really does hate you. Not only has it said that it's got to load within 3 seconds, but in the last few days, here's a quote from the Chrome blog. In future, Chrome may identify sites that typically load fast or slow for users with clear badging. This may take a number of forms, and we plan to experiment with different options to determine which provides the most value to our users. Badging is intended to identify when sites are authored in a way that makes them slow generally. Looking at historical load latencies, and further along, we may expand this to include identifying when a page is likely to be slow for a user based on their device and network conditions. That means if you have a product to sell or a service to sell or some information that you want to get across to people, you may not succeed anymore because Google is going to start, or Chrome is going to start badging websites so that people can see, well, this site is going to be a slow loader, I won't go there. This site might be better for me, so I'll go there, pardon me. So it's going to make it harder for all of us to survive if we're building websites for to sell a product or a service. So, and that came from a Chrome blog post called Moving Towards a Faster Web back on November 11, and there'll be a link to that at the very end. So, thinking about our site visitors, we need to think about what they're going to be what their download speed is going to be, because if you're trying to jam a big website into a Dodo 20 megabyte per second download, pardon me, you're going to have a lot of problems, and so is the person on the other end, so they won't get to see your message. So what is the download speed for the average Australian internet connection? Oh, not again. The average fixed download speed in Australia during quarters 2 and 3 of 2017 was 24.12 megabytes per second. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a test done since. Nothing has been published for Australia since 2017, but here we go again. But the reported evening download speed for the 5 most popular NBN plans at the end of September this year averaged 36 megabits per second. So that's the speed that people are going to be drawing down our websites to see. So we have to think about this a little in a few moments. And I'll press the button again, and it worked. So what are some of the things that make our websites load slower than the speed of growing grass? And I'm sure you've all seen them. They sit there with a little wheel rotating around and around, and nothing happens until you've gone to sleep. So there are some things that we can't control. We can't control the fact that the person who's downloading the site might be on a slow internet service provider plan. we can't always guarantee that the person seeing our site might not have a slow connection to the net between there. They may be looking at an old computer. Old computers are terribly slow at downloading some websites. And they can even have a poorly positioned modem. All these things will affect our website, but we can't do anything about those. But there are lots of things that slow your website down that you can do something about. You can have a slow host, and there are quite a few of those around. If you want to fix that, you can move to a better host. You might be using huge image files. Hands up those who load their photos straight from their camera. No one? No one admitting to it? We get a lot of our clients want to do that, and that's just death to their website when they do that. Toni has some figures about what happens at the back end of your website, but when you've got a huge image file, it will slow the website will be slowed down, because a lot of when people upload those huge image files, they're hoping that the plugin that they have in there, pardon me, will do something to reduce the file size of the image. Unfortunately, most of those plugins are what, and this wasn't my term, another internet expert, or website expert, described the other day as rubbish. I don't always agree with what she says, but in this case I certainly agree with that. If you want to have big photos on your website and you want your website to load quickly, process those images on your computer before you upload them. Run them through an image program like paint.net. It's a free program, does a great deal. Sorry? Yeah, Toni likes Photoscape. A bit involved with me, I'm more simple. If it doesn't, 2 clicks and I haven't done something, it's too much. So you run those images through like Photoscape or paint.net or PaintShop Pro if you're a student or wealthy, and upload the images. You can still upload big images, as you'll see in one of the case studies that I'll show you, but they can be quite small in file size, and that will make your website load much faster. Poorly coded themes are an absolute nightmare, really. We like to use a theme called Avada, which is a mixture of theme and page builder, that's the word I wanted. And it's a great program, easy to use, but on one of our websites that we built for a client who I'll show you again, there was 137 JavaScript files. 137. Yep. So be careful about the themes that you use. Look for some advice on the ones that will load quickly. There are things you can do to make we cut Avada down to 15 files, but you don't want to have to keep adding plugins to make a website faster. You want to get the basics done and build on those basics later on. Poorly coded plugins. Poorly designed websites with too many individual requests. A request, we'll talk about in a moment, but, sorry WordPress, but Jetpack. If you've got Jetpack on your website, run a little test with one of the speed tools I'll talk about later, turn it on, run it, and then turn it off and run your test again. You'll be surprised at the difference that one plugin can make. Up in Hervey Bay, there's a woman who thinks I'm some sort of techno god because she had a website that was loading in about 7 seconds. I turned Jetpack off and instantly 3 seconds load time was gone. So Jetpack can do wonderful things, but for people here in Australia, it can run like a dog and you're better off without it. Anything Google related. Google Analytics, Google Fonts. There was something else we found that Google was doing. I can't remember what it was. But anything Google related, it's ironic. Google says, we want your websites to be as fast as possible. Then they say, use our fonts. Here they are, they're all free. Use Google Analytics, it's free. You turn Google Analytics off and Google Fonts off, and you've got 2 seconds, at least 2 seconds saved. So don't be in a rush to use Google. There are some options for instead of using Google, and people who use Google fonts, they're nice, they look pretty, but show me the data that says that they give you one more sale, one more lead, one more person reading your website, because there isn't any. But I can show you heaps of data that shows that people leave your site if your website is slow, and Google will slow your website down. Pardon me. WooCommerce. We build lots of WooCommerce sites, but there is a file in there that will take up to 1.5 seconds to do absolutely nothing. And I'll explain how that works in a few minutes too. And always remember that no plugins installed, there are no plugins, and having no plugins installed, that will speed up your website. I mentioned before that we knocked 137 files down to 15. If that plugin that we used there hadn't been installed, that website was running around 11 seconds to load the front page. It's now down to about 1.8. So look for plugins that are available and trial them. So before we talked about requests. Requests are the number of calls a visitor's browser has to make to see a page of your website. Requests include calls for images, files, JavaScript files, HTML files, font files, and more. And the fewer requests a browser has to make, pardon me, to see your site, the faster your site will load. So, all these people who want to put great big huge images, again, and down the web page, they might look pretty to them, but they're doing those big images and not having the effect that the webmasters think they are. They're actually turning people away because the websites are slow to load. So, here is an example of requests. At the top one, this was calling for 149 requests. It was taking 10.4 seconds to load, and the website below it was calling for 15 requests, loaded in 1.9 seconds. That's the same website, the same web page, before and after we added some of the tools that I'll talk to you about in a few minutes. But how do you measure the speed of your website? And I should apologise too, I'm sort of dancing around, talking about a little bit here and a little bit there, but we've got to think about those things before we go on to the case studies, so I can explain to you how to fix the problems that many websites have when it comes to speed. How do you measure the speed of your website? There's no room for guesswork, absolutely none. We've had clients come to us and say, oh, my website's running slow, I think it's this. And when we go and have a look, it's absolutely nothing to do with whatever this was, it's other things. So if we listened to them and just tried to fix this, all these other problems would have still been there. There's no room for speculation. Guesswork and speculation lead to disaster. You need facts, genuine figures, real data if you want a positive outcome. But where do you go to get those? And before I show you, I should say that when you start talking about reducing the speed of your website, you need to document everything. Every change you make, put it in a spreadsheet, just list it, because someday something may go wrong and you need to go back and see what you did. So document everything and be anal about your data. That's why I say people think I'm boring. So you need the right tools, and there are 5 tools that almost everyone recommends. Google's own Page Speed Insights. Page Load Time extension for Chrome. It's a simple extension that just pops a little thing up in the top of your Chrome browser and measures the speed that your website downloads, the page you're viewing has downloaded. Pingdom, GT metrics, and web page test. They don't all measure the same things, and they don't all measure them in the same way. So it becomes a bit of a lottery for some people. No, not this. Okay, great. Google's Page Insights. The score you get from Google Page Insights is basically an arbitrary test of metrics determined by Google, and the actual loading speed of your website is not one of them. What use is it? Well, it does have some use, but for years, when I first became interested in speed on our own websites, I was trying to find where Google was testing the websites from, because if you test here in Australia, you get one speed. If you test in America, it's a different speed. But where was it actually getting it from? Well, it wasn't actually using the data of my own website at all. And there's a great paper out there called Science Behind Google Page Speed Insights. And there's a link there, and it'll be on the last slide too. Okay, we go back. Page load time extension for Chrome. An interesting little extension, costs you nothing, and probably doesn't tell you an awful lot either, because the only thing it measures is the time it takes for that web page to load on your computer. Now, I can be sitting next to Toni. We can both be looking at the same website, the same page, and we can get 2 different times on that with that tool, even though we're sitting there doing it at the same time, because this is impacted by local conditions. This is impacted by the speed that it might get along the NBN and then into the data into your home, or by wireless. So it's a very little limited use for anyone who's trying to measure the speed of their website. It just tells you what you're seeing. It doesn't tell you what other people are seeing. So we can have a little break for a moment from the tools and talk about where we should be measuring. But what should we be measuring, and where should we be measuring it? Well, if your target audience is in Australia, this is where you need to be measuring it. If it's overseas, you need to be measuring it in the country, or as close to the country as you can get, where your target audience is located. And if your target audience, I don't even know why I wrote that bit, but so what should we be measuring? Well, I measure page size, and if we looked at that little data, those 2 things of data for that website, it showed page size, the number of requests, the time to first byte, the first paint, on-load time, and fully loaded. And also you need to see what files are contributing to the slow speed. Now, we talked about what the number of requests were. Time to first byte is really critical, because it tells you how your host is working. The time to first byte is the time that it takes from when the host receives a message from your computer saying, or from your browser saying, I want to see this particular website. So it has to go through and find the website, and the time to first byte is when it sends the first byte back to you. 200 milliseconds is the ideal time, I'm told. And think about it. You just scratch your leg in 200 milliseconds. That was about the time it takes. I've seen it faster. I saw a newspaper site in London that had a time to first byte of 0.9 milliseconds. Trouble was, it had so much junk on its front page that it took about 10 seconds for it actually to load on a viewer's computer. So keep in mind that time to first byte, because, as I said, it tells you the time, tells you how your host is going. If it's well over 200 milliseconds, then there's a problem with your host. There could also be a problem with your theme and some of the other parts of your website. The first paint is the time that the first thing appears on the screen for the person who's viewing the website. The onload time is the time when it's ready to show everything. And fully loaded is when everything is fully loaded on the screen. And there is a difference between fully loaded and that onload time. And if there's a big gap in that time, you need to start searching for problems. So what files can also see on these tools what files are contributing to the slow page load. So, let's look at a few definitions first. Page size is the size of your page when everything is required to load, that page is added together. That's images, JavaScript files, CSS, HTML, everything that goes into making that page appear on the screen goes to make up the page size. The smaller this page size, the smaller your site should, the quicker your site should load. Talked about requests being the number of times a browser has to go back to where the website is hosted to download another file. Time to first byte, as we talked about. And first paint, this is the first point at which the browser does any sort of rendering on the page. And onload is the time when the processing of the page is complete, all resources have finished downloading, and then we go to when it actually appears. So then we have the three final contenders in the tools. As I said, Google test page speed doesn't actually measure the speed of your site. It doesn't make it entirely irrelevant, but it's certainly it does for the Chrome extension. It's interesting to know what it takes to load a new computer, but it doesn't tell you anything much about the website's loading speed for other people. So there are three tools there: Web Page Test, GTmetrix and Pingdom. All three measure similar things, but Web Page Test doesn't provide tests that are close to our speeds for desktop here in Australia. So if it's not loading, if it's not testing for speeds that we have here in Australia, and you'd be surprised to learn that quite often our download speeds are much higher than America's. God help them, ours are slow enough. But so you need to know that as I said, all three, but Web Page Test doesn't provide tests that are close to our speeds in Australia. So you see a lot of people on the various message boards for speed will talk about Pingdom, talk about Web Page Test. They also talk about Pingdom, but they're not all that relevant for here in Australia. Pingdom, in fact, is so not relevant that it doesn't tell you what speed it's testing at, and it doesn't tell you where it's testing it from. GTmetrix offers tests at speeds that are more relevant to Australian conditions, and for me, it provides an easier waterfall chart, and it measures from Sydney. So if you put your web page, your website into your URL into the field in GTmetrix, it measures your site as if it was a person in Sydney seeing that site. So that's much more relevant than the others. So let's look at a few more tools. The WordPress tools that you need. There are lots of options in the plugin repository, and what you are looking for are tools that will build a case for your website, combine and minify the scripts for JavaScript and CSS, compress HTML files, lazy load images, and remove files that call for Google fonts. There's also a plugin there that will rewrite a time-wasting file in WooCommerce so that it only loads when it has to and doesn't load automatically for every site visitor every time they visit. And if you're wondering what minification is, it refers to the process of removing unnecessary or redundant data without affecting how the resource is processed by the browser. I use tools that will cache and minify, and because the tool for me that did that with that 137 requests reduced it down, of which 73, something like that, were JavaScript files. It reduced it down, as I said, to 15, of which 3 were JavaScript files. So that's what you want in a tool. And the tools I have used are Autoptimize, didn't think I could say that, WP Fastest Cache, Swift Performance Lite, Swift Performance Pro, Lazy Load by WP Rocket, and WP Super Cache. And I've used others that are no longer supported by their authors, so I'm not going to talk about them here. Interestingly, we were driving through traffic in Brisbane, and a client of ours who runs a butcher shop in Harvey Bay sent a text message to Toni, and in it was a screen grab. And straight away, we knew exactly what had happened because we'd seen it happen before. Swift Performance Lite on his website had crashed, and all he was getting was an error message. Now, it doesn't mean we don't like Swift Performance Lite, but, and because she's so wonderful at what she does, within 10 minutes we had him back online. Had no laptops with us, no tablets, just our mobile phones, and we used our phone to call our contact at the host, and she guided him through what she wanted done, and his website was back. But Swift Performance Lite and Swift Performance Pro are the ones that I really like at the moment. They do a great job of reducing file sizes and some of the other things that we need. So, unfortunately that isn't all that visible, but now on to some case studies. This is a website we built for a guy who builds pizza ovens. They're actually called wood-fired ovens, but they're pizza ovens. Now, as you can see, there's lots of images there, lots of big images. And we included those because we're selling he's selling ovens, but we're selling a dream for him to make people want to buy his ovens. So lots of pictures. No, we didn't hang back on photos, whereas sometimes we might not put so many images. This time, plenty of images. So, it was built with Elementor, and Swift Performance Lite was added later. The first row shows the times with just Elementor. 748 kilobytes page size, 36 requests. It was the first run when I tested it. Time to first byte was 412 milliseconds. 1.4 to the first paint, 2.7 to one load, 2.8 fully loaded. Now, you might think 2.8, well, that's good, that's under Google's 3-second rule. This is the desktop. On a mobile phone, that would have blown out to 4 or 5 seconds. So, we added Swift Performance Lite, and even though it crashed for this other guy, it hasn't crashed for this guy yet. And I should say that the setup, I did the setup wrong. That's one of the reasons it crashed. But with Swift Performance Lite, 473 kilobytes, 7 requests instead of 36, time to first byte 354, and I said 200 was the optimum. Here in Australia, I got 182 on another website at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Most normal times of the day you won't get 200 milliseconds because this is on a shared hosting, so there's always some problems, time problems with shared hosting. But you can see from the fully loaded, 0.9 seconds. I was pretty pleased with that. The owner of the website didn't really understand, but that's okay, I'm happy. A1 gutter cover, huge picture at the top. I hate it. It's only there because he said, I want that at the top. So he got what he wanted. Again, he sells a product or a service that requires a lot of people to see what he's actually been able to do, because it all happens up on the roof. And who sees their roof? So with this, we started off, built it with Avada, as we said earlier, great huge theme, and what was the term you told me? Avada is a page builder as well, that's it. I added WP Supercache and A3 Lazy Loader I fitted later. Now, let me just explain A3 Lazy Loader, or any Lazy Loader plugin, how it works. Now, that's the entire front page. Most people won't see much beyond, on their screen, won't see much beyond those 3 photos. So that leaves another big photo down the bottom. It's out of sight. So what Lazy Loader plugins do is that it says, okay, first come down to the first fold, we'll load those pictures, and then we'll tell the browser and it tells Google that the bottom picture is loaded when it hasn't. It only starts to load when people start scrolling down the page. So you kind kind of fudge the figures and end up with a nice load time for up the top, and down the bottom doesn't matter because Google doesn't see it. So with nothing fitted, it was fully loaded, it was 2.4 seconds. And time to first byte was a miserable 1.3. And that was probably a day when the net was running pretty slow for the planet. It certainly wasn't doing much in Australia. After I fitted WP Super Cache and A3 Lazy Loader, I've got it down to 1.16 seconds, and requests have stayed at 21. If he asked me to do better with the speed, I would go away from WP Super Cache and go over to my tool of choice, Swift Performance Lite. Trust me, it's a love-hate relationship. I love it sometimes, other times, as you'll see in a minute, I hate it. Okay, here we go again. Now, you may wonder why all those photos are blurred out. It's an adult toy store, so I'm not going to show you the pictures. Yeah, I didn't want to offend anybody. But as you can see, there are lots of pictures there, and the size of those pictures change because every time somebody goes to the site, they see a different set of pictures. So you don't ever get a uniform page size there. But this site is my ongoing nightmare. It went live a couple of weeks ago, and it is already my biggest headache. Even today, the owner said, how can we make the back end of this site work faster? There are ways. But at first I thought, started tearing my hair out. How on earth do we make the back end of the site load faster? And then I took a deep breath and went, sorry? Yeah. One of the problems is Shop Assistant, would you believe? But we've got Avada and WooCommerce, big files, but that's okay, we can handle it. We just can't handle a Shop Assistant who runs the site and who insists on putting images with huge file size up because they might just turn out pixelated. We showed her that they don't. She works away nicely for 3 or 4 photos, and then suddenly she's gone back to the huge photos. So, as Toni was telling somebody earlier, we don't tell her, but the owner of the shop has asked us every so often, we'll go in and download the new photos, reduce the file size and upload them, and she never knows the difference. So, this is how the data looked when I first ran GT metrics over it before any attempt was made to add any caching or lazy load plugins. 7.9 seconds, 137 requests, 1.3 seconds, and the web wasn't running slow that day. I found out that there's a problem with mixing those two together, those two, WooCommerce and Avada together. And if you don't have a caching program in there, that time to first byte for some reason blows out. So that's how it looked when we first did it. I thought, well, 7.9 seconds, not bad considering the site. So let's look at a waterfall chart. And I mentioned waterfall charts before. Waterfall charts show everything that loads, the order in which it loads, and it gives you some nice coloured pictures over here that will give you headaches. Not because they're coloured, but because they show you things about how pages, how the files load as the page loads. So, second part of the waterfall chart, nice brown colours. That's a sign that it is all those images are blocking what comes next. And they're also telling you that it's taking 7.42 seconds for each image, or for those images to load. And it goes on, and it just goes on, making you feel less happy with 7.9 seconds. So I added lazy load by WP Rocket and WP fastest cache, and things got worse. How did they ever get worse? God only knows. It just didn't like those two plugins. So, and it got much worse because 7.9 seconds went out to 11.6. How do I tell the owner of the shop? I've been working to speed your website up, and I'm sorry, but it's got 4 seconds slower. So I went back to the drawing board. I deleted fastest WP cache and the Lazy Load plugin and installed Swift Performance Lite and a plugin that changed the way the website or WooCommerce handled a thing that you'd see in the waterfall called refreshed fragments. It's a WooCommerce thing. And basically WooCommerce goes looking for any sign that a visitor has visited that site before and left something in the shopping cart. And it takes a long time to do it. So with those things installed, fully loaded, 2.6, requests down to 15. I was happy. 2.6, well, it was far better than the others and the other times. And 4 days later, the site crashed. The cause, my saviour, Swift Performance Lite. But it all ended well. We went to Swift Performance Pro. We got we had a session with the people from Swift Performance, and they showed me how to fix it, and it's now running well, I hope, except the back end is now loading slowly. So, here's a list of all the, if you want to grab a photo or whatever, all the URLs, the links that I mentioned. You can contact me at those two options, or if you want to spend money and have me improve your website speed, you can even call me. And that's it. Questions will have to wait.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We might just take a little break while we get the tech stuff organised. Use that one, be easier. And do you need to switch up?
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. I'm not a techie person.
Is yours loaded on there?
Yeah.
It is, and there's something we don't know Apple, so.
Like I know what I'm doing. No, where is it? No, I don't know where it is. Okay.
Do you want to see if there's questions?
That's a great idea.
Yep.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Stuart about speed and that kind of thing? Yes. Excellent.
Regarding image size, I used the Google speed test or something, and I advised to use WebP images.
So
Have you used them?
I'm sorry, I'm partly deaf, and your accent. I'll come a little closer.
So I just used Google speed test or something like that, and it advised to use advanced image formats like WebP.
Yes.
Have you used that? Like, would you
WebP.
recommend that?
WebP we're talking about here is a new image format that Google introduced. As somebody, not another, that implies that I am. A web expert once said recently that she was not going to swap to WebP just yet because Google has a wonderful record of introducing things and then forgetting about them. So I haven't even tried WebP. I've got programs that will save in WebP, but I haven't tried it, so I don't know. I'm more than happy with bringing file size down into a JPEG. Any other questions? Yes.
The differences between Swift Lite and Swift Pro, do you think Pro is worth the additional spending money?
Yeah, well, it works out to be about $80 Australian, and I found that there was a couple of options that weren't in Swift Performance Lite. It also gave me the chance to talk pretty much directly to their support team, who did it on a Sunday for us. They have on their website, on the website, they're only available Monday to Friday. I sent the thing off on a Sunday morning. By Sunday night, the website was fixed. So for that, if it's a really critical site, I wouldn't hesitate to use the Pro. Yes.
WebP does work well, especially if you're going to fall back to JPEG.
All right.
And that works really well. Surprised to hear you say web page test doesn't have any selections in Australia.
No, yeah, I didn't. I don't think if I did, I made a mistake. They test at a speed that is much lower. They test. I can't remember the time that on GT Metrics tests at 20 megabits per second, but I think I can't remember that, but it was much lower. And as I say, all these figures were just desktop. You can also test if you want to scare yourself for your mobile, and web page test does the mobile, same mobile test as we do here, as GT Metrics does. Yeah, so but I should have also said that the Google page test tool, use it in conjunction with whichever speed testing tool you want to use, because you combine the information from both and you will see where you really do need to make some changes to your website. I just didn't say much about Google because if you're at Port Macquarie, you would have heard that I hate Google and Google hates me.
And you tell everyone that Google hates them.
Yeah, that's right. Well, why? I have seen so many people say, Google owes me this to have my web page at the top. They're obliged to do it. Yeah, it's their obligation. And we tell them, what? Google doesn't have any obligation to do anything with your website. They don't believe us. That's the way it goes. Any other questions? Yes. The phone, yep. Sorry, I'm just.
I know it's kind of revisiting
Yeah.
the whole photos quality thing again. So I like this fact that as long as the DPI is 72, but then again, the actual size of the image, is there kind of a comfy spot? Like, is there kind of a same?
Well, on that the pizza oven place, I think the top image is something like 1970 by. Yeah, the lady who did it. So physical size is okay, but you've got to judge the file size. The bigger the image, the more the file size. Even when you reduce it, it's a trade-off. If you put up small images, no one's going to look at it. You might save a lot in bandwidth because your file sizes are small, but so the other alternative is put up big pictures, big file sizes. You'll encourage more people to buy your product. So somewhere the happy spot is somewhere in the middle of all that. Yeah. Did that answer? My email address was up there somewhere. Send me an email, I'll try and explain it. Hang on, there's some sign language going on here in the background. Thumbs up. Yes, we're stopping, we're not stopping.
Seeing this is unprecedented with two speakers, we're going to stop quickly eat the pizza before it gets cold, and then Tony's going to give us a head talk after the pizza. Everybody's got full bellies in the food. Yeah, you have a captive audience. So everybody go and grab a piece of pizza.
Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart. Only half a piece of pizza each.
Sure. Thank you very much. Oh, you're welcome. Appreciate it. My email address is on there. Got a question?
Is the presentation?
Yeah, because we couldn't do it.
We can sort that. So you need the slides up.
All right. Can everyone just give us a moment, everyone? Hi. Given the time, Toni has offered to present her WooCommerce talk next month instead. What does everyone here think of that? Hands up if you want to hear it now. If you can't be here, we can always live stream it next month as well. Exactly. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll do WooCommerce Don'ts next month, followed by socialization, Christmas drinks type thing. Maybe even a Christmas cake, okay.
There's going to be drinks as long as everybody brings them.
Yes. BYO.